Josh and Frankie.
What a couple of dumb shits.
Hello, Primates! You found Primus Tracks, congratulations! We're at Primus Tracks on Instagram and all the other things, whatever. You know, I just want to rush through this part because it's a big day here at Primus Tracks Tower. So, we got to bring him in. Frankie Berestein, welcome back.
Hey, guys.
Running right by that. Sorry, Frankie, because we got to get going. We are here with wonderful gentleman who's graced this podcast so many times. It's usually to talk about Primus, but this time we're going to talk about Lespecial because our friends in Lespecial have a new record out. It's called Odd Times, and you can get it through all the wonderful ways in which you can find Lespecial on the internet. We'll talk about that. The easiest way is lespecial.net. Here to talk about that new record, Luke Bemand. Welcome back to Primus Tracks.
Hello, boys.
Hey, Luke.
Hey, fellas. Thanks so much for having me back. As I've said before, this is, without question, my favorite Primus audio podcast. So, always a pleasure.
Our dear friend.
Thank you so much, Luke. We appreciate that, as backhanded as it is. And, you know, we talked about this earlier, and I'm so happy that you get to be here, and you don't have to lug that bass guitar around. You can just let your voice do the talking this time.
Yes, I feel very free. This is great.
Unencumbered. We can do some interpretive dance, have a great time. Man, well, it's great to have you here, and I'm actually really excited for this record, Odd Times, the new Lespecial record. I believe this is the first record you guys have put out since we started chatting back and forth in earnest. So it's really great to get to talk about the gestation and development of a record with you, as far as, and get the inside scoop, because of course we admire the band and the music and the live performances. So really excited to talk about it today. And let's start with that. The album just dropped, as far as when we're recording, about 4 days ago. How's the reception so far?
Oh, it's been great, man. And thank you guys again for having me on to talk about it. As much as I love talking Primus, it's cool to talk about some music that we put out. It's been awesome. You know, this was an album that we probably put the most work into out of all of our albums, and this is our 4th full-length LP. And it took, you know, over a year from kind of its inception to its completion. You know, we started tracking it last summer in June, right when we got back from Red Rocks, with our engineer, Dave Sanchez. And yeah, you know, in that year time, a lot happens. It's a lot of late night texts and small tweaks, and especially because Dave, who produced and engineered the album, mixed it all remotely. So we recorded it together, but the mixing was all done in Denver, Colorado. And so we had a group chat that was just firing on all cylinders, probably much to Dave's dismay, but he was a great sport and an awesome person to work with. And yeah, it's almost kind of surreal when it comes out, because you've been kind of living and breathing, this piece of work that's kind of consumed you for so long, and then it's out and everyone's like, the new album. And I'm like, you mean this album, these 9 tracks I've been listening to nonstop for 13 months, Yeah, the reception has been awesome. It's been so cool to have it out in the wilds and to hear people's reactions to it. You know, our fans, it's so cool to give them new music and hear what they have to say, but also new listeners. That's just as interesting. And we've got some really cool press from it. The day it came out, we were kind of joking that we had it in a new music release from Jam Bass and Metal Injection. And so we were like, we love that. And we love mixing those two worlds. And like Metal Injection is a site that I'll go to and check out for new release Fridays. So that's really cool. And I love bridging those two worlds. And the response has been awesome. So shout out everybody who has listened to it, shared it, or just checked it out in any way. It's been really cool to see everyone's response to it, for sure.
Yeah, there's a couple of things you said there I want to touch on. One is you've been living this album for 13 months. That's a long time. And when I look at making of processes from other bands, some guys go in, record their parts on their own, and leave and forget about it for 6 months. And then the album comes out and they go, oh yeah, what a great, these songs are awesome, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you felt any fatigue with these tunes having developed them for so long. But then maybe it's a refreshing thing to see it in album format.
Yeah, definitely. Every album has its own cycle and its own, process. And for this, once we finished tracking it, and we tracked it in about a week at the Music Cellar, our studio and music school up in Millerton, New York, that Johnny owns. After tracking it, it's like you have to give your ears a rest. And, Dave told us, okay, we're not going to do any mixing notes. We're not going to listen to it. We're going to try and get these songs out of our head for a couple weeks. And then the mixing started, and the mixing, and that's kind of like the really scrutinizing, analyzing and overanalyzing and fine combing all the details and everything. And we did that for a while, and then I think it just happened where everyone got fatigued and stopped listening for a while. And the album kind of got put on the shelf and not forgotten about, but, we get wrapped up in touring, and Dave has his band Havoc, and he's touring, and he's putting out a brand new record in the middle of all this.
Wow.
And so it's just kind of... you kind of need a break until, management or whoever comes back and they're like, hey guys, we got to finish this album. Once then you come up with the game plan for release, and is it going to be through a label, or is it going to be self-released and a touring cycle? And then once you come up with a date, it kind of lights that fire, under everyone's ass, which is, okay, we got to finish it. And then all the other fine details like artwork and things like that. So, it's definitely, you hear about some records, they get tracked, they get mixed, and they get put out there, and it happens in this small window. Mm-hmm. And I think that works for a lot of artists, but for us, we're not quite on the level of, say, Tool, that where it'll take 10 years to craft an album, thankfully. But it definitely does take time for us, and I think you need to, settle with things and think about things and gain some perspective over time. Because some of the songs are brand new, and some of the songs we had been playing for a while. So some songs developed a bit over time. And that's just kind of the way that we operate. And it doesn't go out until every one of us feels completely confident and satisfied with how it is. Nice. Or we're just like, all right, fucking this is done. So, it's a combination.
Did you have any leftovers, Luke?
No, we really didn't. Well, you know what? I shouldn't say that. We did. We have a lot of recorded music, and, we had a lot of improvised music that we recorded, in the sense that we did with Ancient Homies. We had this long piece of improvised music that we ended up cutting up into 3 shorter segments that we called them like the homie trios, mm-hmm. The homie numero uno, dos, and tres. And we talked about doing that with this record, and we had some improvised music that we did with Dave in the studio. And we went back and listened to it, and there were some tracks where Johnny went in and he added a lot of layers through some synthesis, some vocals, and then there were some that were more raw. But I think in the end, the way that we felt was that really worked with Ancient Homies, and it weaved this kind of cool narrative musically throughout it. Odd Times just felt like 9 songs, and they were 9 tracks that made sense, and they worked together, and to put these kind of improvisational interludes didn't feel right. Even though it was a cool concept that we enjoyed in Ancient Homies, it just didn't feel like the move for this. And also, we had to keep it to around 40 minutes in order to press it on vinyl. So, there is extra music recorded, and we've talked about releasing that, and maybe we will one day, and hopefully we will. But this album felt like it was like at its completion point when it was done.
Okay, so you were working within the limits of vinyl. That's interesting.
Yeah, which is, 40 minutes. It's not that long. You consider out, I was listening to Mars Volta albums that were 70 plus minutes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Some of my favorite albums are Mars Volta albums that are that long. But you would need to look at, pressing 2 records in vinyl. Yep. And we released this independently, so we didn't have a record label to put up the money for that. Not that we did, even with Ancient Homies, we released it through Rope-a-Dope Records, and they're a great label, and it was really cool, but, with labels, you toss up, what do they do with you versus how much do they take from you, and we felt pretty confident about doing this ourselves, and we've been able to sell out our first few waves of vinyl, which is really dope, so shout out to the fans for doing that, and no labels get to take our money, so... We need it. It's
nice to recover that margin. Nobody's reaching into the pot. Yeah, this record is interesting to me in that it has a decidedly heavier edge than previous records, and I'm sure you realize that in the creation of it. Particularly at the outset, these first couple of tracks here, Lungs of the Planet and They Live. Curious what spurred that direction, whether it was conscious, unconscious, and of course, when I saw you guys play some shows recently and saw some set list, I mean, you're throwing Slayer songs in there. You're doing a mashup of Enter Sandman and Stan Storm, excuse me. So there's you guys are throwing some heavy stuff out there live too. I'm just curious where all that came from.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely been a conscious effort, but it's also been organic the way it's come up. We all have roots in heavy music, and I think I've even said on this podcast, Rory and I played in a Slipknot cover band, when we were 13. I mean, we come from that heavy kind of school, and Lespecial has kind of just been getting heavier over the years, where it's always been a part of our sound, but we've definitely been leaning into it more in recent years. And we just love the reaction it has. We love to be able to play festivals that are kind of in the jam band scene and bring to the table what we've been calling friendly hippie mosh pits. I think it's cathartic for people as well as for us, and refreshing to hear some heavy music, especially in that kind of scene of more funk and jam where Lespecial kind of lives. So this album was definitely decidedly going to lean into that more. And I think it started with Ancient Homies and working with somebody like Dave Sanchez, who is the frontman of an amazing Denver thrash band called Havoc that I recommend anyone check out. It's like really intense, really intense speed metal, like just bone shattering drums, really intense riffage. It's really powerful, heavy stuff. And so it was fun to work with him in a more producer role where he was kind of pushing us to lean into those riffs and would say things like, slow that riff down a bit. He's like, don't you know, like a riff sounds heavier, slower. I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Those are those little things that somebody else can bring to the table that you might not consider. That's a great point.
Right, 100%. It's been fun to lean to that heavier side, and the reaction's been cool. And, it's not like we want people to think that Lespecial is now a thrash band, We've even started to talk about writing some more music that's more in the electronic side now on the other side of this album. So I think that we're always going to be a multifaceted band, but right now, we're leaning into the heavy edge, and this album definitely showcases that.
Yeah, I was going to say to call it a metal record is certainly a disservice because it's metal. One is a generic label. And when I hear metal, I go, eh. But when I hear thrash metal, I go, okay.
Right.
But you guys do so much on this record that's way beyond metal. And to me, that's what, over the course of your 4 records, that's what makes Lespecial unique, attractive, and, rewarding as a listener. Because you can thrash, but you can also dance, you can groove, you can lean against the wall and nod your head. You can do any of those things that people react to music by, and they all work within the Lespecial framework.
Yeah, and thanks. I appreciate that. I think that's something that's important to us, and I totally hear you. Metal can be kind of an alienating term, and sometimes it's the vocals for some people, or it's just some people aren't super into heavy music, and that's fine. Everyone has their own taste. But there is, there can be that connotation of, oh, it's heavy, that's Limp Bizkit, Woodstock 99, I'm gonna light a plank of wood on fire and crowd surf on it if I listen to that. And it's like, no, you can listen, if you go and listen to a Korn song and listen to the instrumental from 2000s, that'll be some of the heaviest grooving shit you've ever heard. The new metal music and heavy music has its place, in modern music as well. And, electronic music, a lot of the people that listen to bass heavy music were metalheads, so I think it's an evolution, and there's things you can find that, crossover maybe you didn't expect. But, I love to see people in the front, like some of our female fans in the front, and they'll be the first ones to be headbanging. You know what I mean? And kind of, it's just yeah, chicks love metal. You don't have to just be like, oh, well, I don't like jam, but I don't like this and that. Everybody, doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter the music you grew up listening to. Heavy music can resonate with you no matter what, music you listen to. So I think that we've kind of found that and seen that in festivals.
That's great, man. Yeah,
it's been fun.
Yeah, and I can point to my good friend KP came to the Star Theater show that you guys did in Portland not long ago, earlier this year, I should say. And she had listened to a bunch of Lespecial beforehand, but she's like, I like these groovy ones. And then you guys played Tonberry and a couple other the heavy ones. She turned to me and said, I don't normally listen to heavy music, but I like this.
I love that. That's one of the coolest things that you can do. That's one of the best compliments that I think you can get is I don't normally listen to this kind of music, but I like it. And if it makes anybody a little bit more open-minded to checking out something new, then that's dope. You got to be genre fluid, it's 2023.
Well, speaking of that, genre fluid, the Lespecial bio line keeps changing. Progtronic Power Trio, Future Groove. I don't even know what it is right now. You guys choose these terms, and they're quite evocative. Is that conscious that you're changing those descriptors around with as you guys develop your sound?
Yeah, I think it's almost like you have to do it for marketing, but it's almost just become an inside joke to us to the point where it's like, we'll just put whatever the hell we want. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Progtronic Power Trio. It's like, fuck off. Like, that's so stupid. But, what, like you said, evocative. I guess that's what you want. Like, we play prog music, but we also use synths and samplers and play electronic music. It's hard to pick one genre, and you get sick of reading the same bios where people go like, touching on every genre from blues, rock, and jam. It's like, oh my god, wow, 3 genres. Like, and it's not like the band's fault. It's just we're limited with our terms, so we just keep making words up, and it probably just doesn't mean anything, but that's how we cope with it.
Bluegrass sludge. Put that next time. Why not?
See, that's kind of like, but even Billy Strings kind of fucks with that. Like,
there you go.
Like he's a metal kid coming to the bluegrass world. I mean, when we were putting out like Omni Squid, I was putting on some like press release somewhere. I was calling it underwater haunted house music. It's like somebody's like, "Do you want me to put that in the article?" I was like, "Yeah, that or jam. Like, it's up to you." They're like, "Yeah, we'll go with jam." Oh my god!
Wow, they really went for the safe one.
Yeah, I was like, that it might be enticing to maybe some, more nautical listeners or readers, but
right. Yeah, we'll you guys are really good with the whaling vessels. They love you guys.
That's it, man. We're trying, Primus has the fisherman market on lock. We're trying to get those whalers to bump the music.
No, those seafarers, they got to fill their time somehow. I think you're onto something.
Shanty tunes.
That's shanty. Yes. Sludge shanties. There. That's it. That's your next one.
Sludge shanties. I mean, you could call like some Primus songs sludge shanties, I think. Like,
I got a few
maybe
in
John
mind.
the Fisherman could even, okay. Maybe Fish On is the sludge shanty I'm looking for.
Oh, that one's sludgy. Absolutely. Yeah. We've discovered a new genre, and I know it's hard to, think about your next record right now, but keep that in mind.
Sludge shanty. I'll write it down.
Sludge shanty. Let's talk about some of these tracks on the record. Well, I want to talk about all of them. We've got 9 tracks, about 41 minutes. You guys do span a lot of stylistic elements here. The album opens with a 7-minute slab called Lungs of the Planet. This one, is this one of the older tracks?
Yeah, this is probably the oldest track on the record, or at least the track we've been playing out live the longest. Because, like you had mentioned, you saw us in Eugene over a year ago and we were playing it.
Yeah.
I think we actually debuted it at the Mishawaka, a beautiful venue in Colorado. Oh, man, I don't even remember the year now. I mean, maybe it was like 2019 or something that. Maybe no. What am I? It's like 2021. I don't know. Okay. I can't get those. But for sure, that's the one that's been out the longest. Which is also part of the reason we wanted to release it as a single. It was something that the fans were familiar with and people had heard, at least in our circles. And then we wanted to give them unreleased music that we had never played before live on the record to kind of hear it for the first time as a part of that experience.
And you guys got to shoot a music video for this at ESPN Studios of all places. So did SVP have the hookup? Is that what?
Yeah, SVP hooked us up with that one. My man, Scott Van Pelt. No, this was through a friend of ours, Christian Kokis. He's the man. He's a friend of the band, a big supporter of the band, and he just works at ESPN, which is in Bristol. It's only about an hour from where I live in Connecticut.
Nice.
And he told us, we have this opportunity to film it at this studio, and they're excited to work with you guys. So we brought in our videographer, Vin Pugliese at VFX Design, and CB Video Marketing, and Claw, and the three of us, obviously, and there was this incredible video wall, this like 180 panoramic video wall, and there was also all video panels on the floor, and we brought in all this footage of like lush rainforest, but then the rainforest burning, and that's kind of the point of the song, is about the rainforest burning and things like that. We say it's our metal song to save the rainforest, and so it was really cool to play in that environment, and the crew at ESPN was so cool. And they were so into using this studio as to film like a rock music video.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that shout out to the Catalyst stage. It was really cool, and they've invited us back, so maybe we get the opportunity to do it again. Yeah, it was a cool experience. People can check it out on our YouTube if they want to.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great video. And CB put a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, I think, on his Instagram, so it was really fun to watch that.
Yeah, and we got there, and, they were like, look, we can't be tagging ESPN. They were really cool to let us say that it was at ESPN, because initially, before the contract started, they were like, this can't be said that it was at ESPN, and we were like, fine with that. But, so the day of, we're all like giddy, like walking around like, oh, we're in a studio, look at these fucking cameras, like, and we were like, all right, you can't say ESPN. But so we were just trying to be cheeky about filming it, because it really was a surreal experience. And I got to go and check out like the actual ESPN studio. Like I sat at like the desk,
nice.
Not SVP's desk, but
no, that's off limits. He's
he's in DC. I was told. I requested to sit at his desk. But yeah, it was really cool. It was cool. So shout out to Christian for hooking that up. That was awesome.
Yes, definitely go to YouTube and search for Lespecial Lungs of the Planet and check out that video. It's really great. I'm a big fan of it. And of course, the message too. It's an important message. Speaking of that, it's great to listen to John doing some vocals. He really shines on that one. And I love some of the harmonizing, that layering. And I know you guys are largely an instrumental band. Mm-hmm. Was there more of a push for vocals on this record?
I think it's whenever we do a record, it's almost kind of with this and Ancient Homies, it's almost kind of half and half instrumental and half vocals. And that's kind of how our live sets are too. Maybe majority instrumental, especially live, and especially if we're doing some improvising or playing some more electronic stuff that just doesn't have the vocals. I think that was something that Dave Sanchez helped out with a lot too. Raise was a track, again, that was a bit older that we had been playing out, like Lungs of the Planet, and that had been an instrumental song. Mostly because we couldn't figure out how to write a vocal part in 5/8. That worked. And that was Dave's idea, and he came up with this really cool rhythm for it. But I singing on like the downbeat of one bar, and then waiting 2 bars, and then the downbeat of that one, and it almost sort of punctuated the rhythm of what is, forgive the pun, an odd time song. Mm-hmm. So it was cool to work with somebody in a more producer role like that. So I don't know if it's a conscious effort or not, but yeah, the songs with John's vocals are definitely some of the standout tracks on the record, I think.
I'm a fan of that Lungs of the Planet with that edge that's been advertised, but also the sense of melody and even a sense of, to me, of meditation, on the thematic elements of the lyrics. And so, really, I got to go to that last minute. The last minute of the track, I in my notes, I wrote, it has a sound of immediacy as if we're watching it all burn in front of us. And because John's making some really sweet guitar noises, and you're holding that down, that low end, and Rory gets to really let it rip on a lot of tracks. But Rory wrote the rhythm for the outro of that track, and cool. Because Lungs of the Planet is an older song and a longer song, it did take a while to kind of come together. I mean, for anyone that listens to it, the beginning is kind of this, like, we refer to it as like a riff gallery. It's like 4 different riffs, and those were not random. Those were like, every one of those riffs were inverted and put in different places. Not sure how long it would be until we got to a place where I really like it now, and I think it flows, even though it can be kind of jarring, where it starts with these big E minor crashes, and then it modulates to B flat, which is like a diminished fifth up. So that can be kind of alienating, but it works. But the end of the song, Rory came up with that really cool double kick pattern. Yeah. And Johnny actually is syncing up with him with the low chuggas, and that high-end solo you hear at the end of the track is actually my bass, just with an octave up pedal and a harmonizer pedal and a bunch of distortion and fuzz. Oh, nice. Yeah, I was curious about that. So you're doing some nice heavy lifting there.
Yeah, it's just kind of fun to do that role reversal where John can do that low sludge metal and the bass can take it up a couple octaves. Our sound guy, Cooper, live is sometimes like, dude, you're killing me with that. Like, because I'll just put on like a fuzz pedal, 2 distortions, start scraping my picks, and sometimes it's louder than others. Sometimes I get a little too much feedback. But I like to make it sound as gnarly as possible, and Dave definitely helped me do that in the studio.
Great track. It's a very powerful opener too, and I do recall a year and a half ago, once again, because you've been playing this for a long time, you did lean into the mic and say, "The rainforest is metal as fuck, y'all."
Yeah, yeah, man, it is. I mean, what's more metal than saving the rainforest?
Yeah,
and a band we really like and are influenced by, Gojira. They're an amazing French metal band, and they have an incredible album called Amazonia that came out a couple years ago, and that's very much about the rainforest and indigenous tribes and things like that, and has a pretty powerful message. So, we were inspired by that, and also by a drum teacher that we have, Charlie Kyle, that works with Johnny at the Music Cellar a lot, and he believes very much in, changing the world through music. And he was the one who came up with this concept of lungs of the planet. And Lespecial has to write a song about the lungs of the planet in the rainforest. And he's somebody that John has worked closely with and studied with. I think he was envisioning more of like a 12/8 Afro-Cuban song and less of like a speed metal song, but the message is still the same. Maybe more urgent now. I don't know, hopefully.
Yeah, it can be received in any which way. So that's really cool. You guys went in that direction. The second track is called They Live. Frankie, you've seen the film, yes?
Yes.
Nice.
Wonderful. I have learned that John has not seen the film. Is this true?
Yeah, I know, which is crazy. I saw you comment on his post the other day. And you know what? I hadn't seen the film in a long time, and I recently watched it. Me and my brother just threw it on when the album came out on September 29th, and I was like, we've been trying to, spooky season is upon us, so we try to get our horror movies in when we can. And I was like, let's watch They Live. And not my go-to Carpenter horror, but still a great movie. And it was, that was a song that I wrote during quarantine and just kind of observing everybody being very angry at the government, and that movie just felt very timely when I was writing that song.
Nice. It was cool to have the samples from it in there too. I thought that was
hopefully
effective.
We don't get sued for that. We didn't know how to go about, like, we couldn't figure out the licensing for it.
I don't know how you clear a sample. I don't know if you can get away with it as fair use. I'm not sure.
It's kind of the lines are blurry, and we talked to a lot of people about it. We didn't just throw it on there like, okay, hopefully this doesn't happen. There was a lot of people, and a lot of people were like, I don't know.
I hope you don't have to issue a recall on those vinyl or anything.
Yeah, me too. We've been okay so far, and it's all on digital streaming services. I mean, and like John Carpenter is like my hero. Like, I would never want to.
Oh, you don't want to rip him off? No.
I don't want to rip off my guy. He's just inspiring to me, But I think about like the Halloween music, and you hear that places, how many people have remixed and done that. So
sure.
And, none of the music on the song is actually, related to the music in the film. But those dialogue samples, it can be kind of dicey. So, for now, we're good.
Well, it's funny that you say it's not really related to the film, because there's a specific part.
Yeah.
It's from about 1 minute and 20 seconds to 2 minutes. There's this kind of a B part here. I want to sync this part and loop it with that 6-minute fight scene between Keith David and Roddy Piper, man. It fits,
The most awkward, weirdly choreographed fight scene ever. So, do you know that the cripple fight in South Park is choreographed to replicate the They Live fight? Yeah.
I should have known that, but, It is an awkward fight scene, but I think because it's so real. And those guys rehearsed and practiced and staged, choreographed that fight. I was just reading about it recently for almost an entire month. And then...
What, really?
Yeah. They just getting all the blocking down and who's going to do what. And of course, you read it and they're like, I accidentally punched him a bunch of times, and all that. But they... I
mean, Roddy Piper was in the WWF back then. Yeah. So, that makes sense.
He's a natural, right? So he got to train up Keith David in the art of taking a fall and all that stuff. And they knocked that out, man. And that fight scene is one of the best fight scenes ever. And it is.
I just love how slow it is. And you just keep thinking it's going to end. And then one of them gets up. It's so much fun.
They just beat the piss out of each other. So... For those of you that have seen They Live, just imagine Keith David and Roddy Piper going at it for the next 40 seconds as you listen to this part from They Live. Fight music.
Nice.
And then I cut it off, but that going back to that heavy groove too. Holy cow, man. You guys are really bringing the heavy. Man.
Yeah, it's just like kind of that drop D, chugga, hammer on, hammer off. Definitely more in that Tool inspired. Just like momentum, just trying to push it forward. Just Keith David just not giving up on Roddy Piper just getting back up. Yeah, damn, I got to come up with like a cut of that track to the fight scene. It's a great idea.
I challenge any listener right now to put that together and please send that to us.
Oh my god,
so
yes.
happy.
I mean, shit, if we don't get it taken down for the audio sample, we might as well get it taken down for full on just score the movie with it.
Yeah, shoot for the moon here. If we're gonna get a cease and desist.
Yeah, let's go all out.
I really like that track because it is kind of opening new doors, because I've never heard you guys do that kind of before this record. Really lean into that chugging riffage, man. That's really cool. It's fun.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a really fun one to play live. We've only played it about 4 or 5 times. That was one we really wanted to kind of keep under wraps until the album came out. And, Dave made it sound so big and heavy on the record, we were almost, a little bit hesitant about how we can replicate that live. And it's different live, but it's fun. It's got a lot of momentum. And when we did it for, I think, like the second time at Dillon Amphitheater in Colorado, and people were crowd surfing to it, I was like, all right, this is going to work live.
Yeah. So you're not at all challenging the audience. They're into it. That's good.
Oh, totally. Yeah. The people are, like I said, the friendly hippie mosh pits. I think it's cathartic. They all get, they get to bang around each other. It's not like some crazy like wall of death pit,
My favorite.
Which, hell, I'm down. But, the vibe is fine. I mean, the mosh pit, like I saw, when Primus and Slayer did the final campaign tour, mm-hmm. I mean, like that mosh pit, they had a dude like in a wheelchair that they were spinning around on the floor. Awesome. Like these metalheads are some of the friendliest, coolest people you'll see. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like metal heads in a mosh pit and rocking out together, I see more camaraderie with that than people that are like gatekeeping or like, with their jacket over the rail up front at like jam band shows. Like, don't stand near me. This is my 179th Grateful Dead tribute band show. Like,
I'm recording.
Put me with the metalheads. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Put me with the metalheads. Put me in the pit.
Nice, man. The third track is called Raise. That was, I believe, released after Lungs to promote things. You said this is an older one in terms of you'd been playing it a few times?
Yeah, really just this and Lungs were songs that we had been playing. And this was an instrumental, and then we shelved it for a while once we started working on it in the studio.
It has a hypnotic bent to it for me, and then as in how it starts. And then you've got these rhythms with these odd time signatures, as you said. You guys really lean into this syncopation throughout. In my notes, I wrote, what you're doing, especially at the beginning, is not overly fancy during the verses to contrast John's looping lick there, but it's so effective because you kind of set that ground floor for us, because we know at this point, you guys don't necessarily lock into one thing and play it for 5 to 7 minutes. There's going to be you're going to take a step in another direction, right? So you're laying that groundwork. And this is the one, my God, in the last half, you get to lay down some angular stuff, and Rory just gets to blast away. And it's incredible to hear. Rory's been on a bunch of times. We've seen you guys play. It blows me away every time. And then I listened to this track and went, God damn, boy can play.
Yeah, we let Rory off the leash on this one. He just goes ham at the end. It's great. And David did an amazing job with the drum sounds. But this is another older one. This came from a lesson that John took with Javier Reyes, who is the second guitarist for Animals as Leaders.
Right.
Frankie, you know Animals as Leaders, right? He's nodding in approval.
I'm a fan. I know the band pretty well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like Tosin Abasi and Matt Garska, it's a trio. They're incredible. But Javier plays a lot of like those thumping grooves, and that kind of technique. And so John did an online lesson with him, and Javier showed John the selective picking technique, and that's what kind of gave way to John writing this rhythm in 5/8 time, this raise rhythm. And so when he was showing it to us, we were all kind of hearing the downbeat in different places because it's tricky rhythm, and it's kind of this taka 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 taka. And it's almost like you can hear it where the begins on the taka taka, or you can hear it on the taka 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 taka. So do you hear it where the notes begin, or do you hear it where it sounds like there's a pickup and the phrase begins?
Yeah.
And it was tricky, and we were all kind of hearing it in different places. So we kind of chose to accent both. So where that bass first comes in is the downbeat where Rory and I were hearing it. And we flipped the beat about halfway through the section and start emphasizing the downbeat where John was hearing it. And it just kind of created this cool way to switch up the groove and put a different backdrop on a riff that doesn't change, but make it feel like it changes. So yeah, it was that was a really fun one to write, and a cool one to hear it come together, and that end part especially. where we're playing these syncopated rhythms that keep changing, but to have Rory locked in with that, but then soloing on top is definitely a cool moment on the record.
You know, I imagine this one being set in a rainforest too, and I have no idea if that was intentional, but it could have just been my biased imagination from the first track.
I love that.
It just feels not jungly, but it just feels like it's kind of set in one of those claustrophobic forest, dark rainforest, and somebody's trying to find their way through it, and maybe going in circles.
Trying to find the rays of light to guide you through this dark, foreboding forest.
Yeah,
and I think that works for sure.
Yeah, I love the vocal pattern on this one too, and I described John's guitar solo as thoughtful. I don't know why, but it just seemed like he put a lot of consideration into it.
It is. He's a guitar. He is thoughtful in his playing and melodic, and the phrasing is really cool. And it's not like it's just kind of one take of shredding. No, I think that's a good word for it. I think he would appreciate that.
I noted that it might be my favorite track on the record, but
cool.
I've only listened to the record 2 times, and this is a record. I'll stop and say this record deserves a lot of listens, especially on some nice cans to really dig in and find out what's going on with the time changes and riffage change and all the various parts that come together to make these tracks. It's pretty great, man. I'm a fan.
Thank you.
And then you hit us with Divider. So now all of a sudden we're dancing. We're on the dance floor.
Yeah.
A reviewer called it a reprise of Repeater from Ancient Homies. And I thought, oh, interesting. So I listened to him back to back and, there's a link. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of bands can get away with putting this kind of track between Rays and Fear the Djinn, which is very interesting. So what did you guys want that continuation from Homies to this one? In some way or another?
Yeah, totally. This song was born out of kind of a jam that we would do after Repeater Live, and we actually ended up calling the song Repriser.
Okay.
But we were like, it almost is a little too on the nose, and if people catch on that it's related to Repeater and almost a sort of sequel, then that's really cool. But Divider fit, I think, Johnny's lyrics a bit better too. And yeah, it's like the vocal melody is what is the kind of the through line for it. But yeah, it's this very kind of like LCD sound system inspired big synth with a lot of percussion. And there was a lot of talk about this track when we recorded it. We were like, this is a fun track that we like. Maybe it won't fit on the album. And there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not it should go on the album. And our manager was like, do not put this song on the album. He's like, this makes no sense. You guys are making this dark, heavy album, and this is this like dancey, upbeat track. And I was like, that's exactly why it should go on the album. This is like a reprieve. And if you see a Lespecial set, that's what you're going to get. And you're going to get a dancey electronic tune sandwiched between 2 heavy songs. And I'm glad we did. It's definitely kind of the black sheep, but I think you need to have a little bit of something uplifting amidst the sludge. So,
well, and break it up so it doesn't all. And not saying they do, but you want to break it up so that upon a casual listen, it doesn't all blend together. Right. And I don't think these tracks do, but this one really provides, and it is literally a divider. It's a dividing line between these other 2 tracks. Yeah.
Right, and it's where the first side of the record ends, so the divider worked in a few different perspectives there.
See, you guys are so sneaky. The next track, Fear the Djinn, Wishmaster?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Frankie, Wishmaster?
Yeah, I guess so.
Do you know the movies? Do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm a film buff.
Oh, well, of course, yes. Of course he's seen
He knows Wishmaster.
Have you seen all 13 of them, though? Or however many of them? Okay, yeah.
Are you? There's 13 Wishmasters?
I'm exaggerating. There's at least 5 that I know of, and I've seen this many of them. I've seen none of them.
Have you not seen the original?
I'm sure I either heard of it and saw a few minutes of it, and then I looked up the film on IMDb, and Robert Englund's in it, so I'm thinking, well, I have to watch it because he's the greatest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got like Wes Craven's name all over it. He didn't direct it.
Okay.
I forget that Robert Kurtzman directed it, but it's Wes Craven's name. As a horror junkie, I'm gonna watch it. And it was actually recommended to me by a friend, Jonathan Coleman. Shout out, a great bassist from the Philly area. He plays in the band Muscle Tough. Jonathan Coleman is the man, and he will give me some great movie recommendations. And he just kept on me about Wishmaster. Have you watched it yet? And it was like around October a couple years ago, and I think actually back in 2020, and I'm just kind of hanging out like in my studio practicing bass and threw on Wishmaster, and I'm watching. I'm like, oh, this is batshit crazy, and I just kind of started writing this like thump rhythm while I'm watching it, and the two just became kind of linked. And I ended up just kind of writing the whole song while I'm watching this movie.
Oh, awesome.
So, and there's just some funny, like, it's not Wes Craven's best by a lot, but it's just crazy early '90s, just like manic horror and silly sets and ridiculous lines. And it was too much fun to work with our visual guy Vin Pugliese on putting up actual visuals from Wishmaster on an LED screen when we did it. So we'll do more of that with him on the upcoming tour. But
awesome.
I mean, just horror movies are kind of my muse. So. That was the deal with this one.
Well, it's certainly leading to some heavy riffage. I'll play a few seconds from Fear the Djinn because, once again, you guys you're adding more to the Lespecial genetic code by doing this kind of thing.
Nice.
Here's a little bit of that one. The nice thing about this one and all these other tracks, it's heavy, but it's heavy prog, right? It's very proggy in its presentation too. In the sense of the songwriting, but the production itself is really nice and clean all throughout, and so it doesn't remind me of like a Rush record because it's a little more in your face. But the songwriting, man, you're taking us places. It's really fun.
Cool. Yeah. This is, that distorted bass, it definitely, I feel like it has a little bit of like that anti-pop kind of that Lacquerhead groove to it, which, one of our favorite songs to cover. I just love playing the Lacquerhead bass line, as you guys know, because we talked about it for 2 hours on that episode. And there's something about the way that groove on a bass pedal with distortion is a really cool sound. But this song was even a bit more inspired for me by a band called The Omnific, and they're an Australian trio with 2 basses and a drummer. Toby Peterson is an incredible bassist for anybody out there who's into that kind of thumpy prog metal, Animals as Leaders, Polyphia kind of vein. And they just write some really incredible riffs, and I love that vibe, and so that's kind of what inspired the feel for this, other than Wishmaster, of course.
Okay, killer. All right, The Omnific, I wrote it down. That's a great name, too.
Yeah, check them out. Yeah, really great trio from Australia. Nice. I would love to see them live one day.
All right, Frankie, I'm going to play a little bit from the next track called Del Mondo Strange Witch.
Here we go.
And you tell me what you're hearing.
All right.
Okay, I gave you 30 seconds, Frankie. What do you hear?
The bass sounds like stuff Les would do on the Bucket of Bernie Brains record.
Nice.
Oh, you're pulling Bernie Brains. Nice. That's I think you're in the neighborhood. I wrote down
the guitar was kind of Brown Album-ish in places, right?
Brown, okay.
Nice, Frankie.
I wrote that was a tribute to the back half of Pork Soda. It's so porky to me. But and the reason I say that is the atonal wailing. Johnny doesn't do a lot of atonal wailing like that, but he does some good stuff here. And then sliding around on your fretless 5-string there, Luke. That was the 5er, right?
Yes, sir.
You got a fat sound on that. And then Rory is hitting anything but a snare drum. And that just makes me think, oh my gosh, this is the last half of Pork Soda, because they're just so far out there on that record. And you guys, I think I feel the influence there, but you guys are making something original out of this, because it, and by all accounts, this should be my favorite track on the record because of what it evokes for me, right? Yeah, this should be my favorite special track of all time. But you guys really found a sound here, and it's bizarre. And once again, it's out of the realm, or it's out of the norm for you guys. I mean, as far as my familiarity with your work.
Absolutely. I think obviously we're a band that loves Primus, and we love covering Primus at our live shows. But the Primus comparisons to me are always interesting because a lot of our original music doesn't really sound like Primus. Mm-hmm. But we have a couple songs that definitely lean into that heavier, and this one is definitely taking some inspiration from Pork Soda specifically. Mm-hmm. And I just love Pork Soda so much because, I've said on the podcast, Frizzle Fry is my favorite. That's just some of the most iconic. To Defy and the track Frizzle Fry and Groundhog's Day are like, for me, that's just peak Primus. But something that was just so interesting about Pork Soda was when they went from that more quirky kind of funk metal sound, which was prevalent in even mainstream music with bands like the Chili Peppers and Mr. Bungle in the weirder circles, like Pork Soda is when they went from quirky, crazy metal band to just like haunted house music. And that record is just so dark and heavy, and it's the characters in it, like from Bob to My Name is Mud, they're these tragic characters, and it's just got this darkness to it that I love. And that album just stands on its own in Primus's catalog and also just in music. It's just one of my all-time favorite records. And so when we started writing this song, I was just like, this just feels like Pork Soda, and I'm just going to run with it. And, it's the only track on the record that I sing and that I wrote lyrics for. All the other vocals and lyrics are by Johnny. But this was one, I tried to do my best Tom Waits impression.
Yeah.
I've got like the megaphone effects. I'm trying to sound like, Tom Waits in like Bone Machine or Mule Variations. For sure. Some of my favorite Tom Waits. But my attempt at Tom Waits through the Luke Bemand lens just ends up sounding more like Claypool vocals, which is fine. And, if people draw that comparison, I'm honored, but that is me doing my best Tom Waits, and it just ends up sounding kind of like Les, but that also fit the vibe of the track. So,
nice. I wasn't sure if that was you or Rory, and I had eliminated John from consideration, and not because it didn't sound like him, because I thought, I don't think he would do this with his vocals. So like you, but you or Rory, it makes much more sense.
Yeah, so, and Rory sings the Primus, the Claypool vocals live when we cover Primus, and he's frankly better at it than me, and it allows me to just focus on the bass bar, which is hard enough, and he can sing and play it both together. But this one was just me kind of just going off about a Cajun cannibal down in the swamps, trying to sound like Tom Waits in a megaphone, like in the bayou at night. That was what I was trying to evoke with this one.
I think you got there. It's a fun one. I really like that track. It's out there, and I like out there. It's a good thing.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's another weird one, but it's another fun one that nobody had heard until the album came out. So a lot of our fans, and especially a lot of our fans and friends that are Primus fans, responded pretty well to this one and could hear the Pork Soda vibes. A reviewer, B-Gat, shouted out something about swigging a glass of Pork Soda to this one. So,
oh yeah, he was on top of it. He knew.
Yeah. It might be, the influence is definitely on our sleeves with this one, but I'm okay with it.
No, it's great. It could be a Lost Primus track. It really could. You could probably fool some people.
Yeah, well, that's great then. Thank you.
Yeah, then you've accomplished what you set out to do, I suppose.
Right.
Yes. And then you follow it up with an introspective solo bass track. Where has this been all your life?
It's kind of my like faux Jocko attempt I've had. Like it's a bass piece I wrote like with a lot of harmonics, which as any other bassist definitely inspired by Jocko and songs like Portrait of Tracy. But it was kind of a song that again it felt different than the rest of the record, but it felt a little bit more optimistic, or maybe I don't want to use, I don't know. I can't call my own song like, beautiful. You know what I mean? Other people, I guess, can. But it sounded just a little bit more like there were like a moment of levity amongst all the darkness, and something maybe kind of encouraging. And, Rory ended up playing the drums quietly when we recorded it, just because it's hard to play harmonics on a bass at a loud volume. So he kind of had to play down to me. And Dave was like, don't play softer. He's like, play louder. I can't mix it when it's that soft. And he's like, I can't hear when Rory's like, because we record it all live in the same room. Okay. There'll be, if there's overdubs, we can do them separately, but we like to do the skeleton of all tracks together live, like we rehearse and write. But so he ended up putting a lot of this reverb on the drums, which to me is really cool. It almost has this like kind of distant like battle cry, like war drums coming over the hill or something like that. And so it's a different sound, but it's cool. And nobody's like made fun of my Jocko attempt yet.
Okay, so this one was not, although my mind went there, it was not inspired by Gandalf saying, look for me on first light of the third day or whatever, right?
Man. Damn, no, I wish it was.
Oh, well, we can retroactively say that was the inspiration.
When Gandalf the White shows up
At Helm's Deep,
in the forest. At Helm's Deep, just in the nick of time. Yes, no, that was it. That's what inspired it.
Well, it's funny you said Jocko, and this is why I was pushing Michael Manring on you. Is he studied with Jocko? And my question was, are you sure you hadn't heard of Michael Manring before making this track? Because that's what, and I've been listening to him a lot lately, but that's what it brought to mind. So you, my friend, you have a wonderful treasure trove of music to explore with Manring.
Yeah, I know you've told me, and other people have as well, and I still have to dive into it. Been told, so yeah, I need to get into that.
I don't want to oversell it, but it might change the way you look at the bass guitar.
Let's go.
And then after the first light, we have Stingy Jack, which I think I accidentally read as Stingy Jack the first time I saw it.
No, it's Stingy Jack. This is the Rory track. He named that one.
So it's Stingy Jack. It's not Stingy Jack.
No, it's Stingy Jack. It's after some like old folklore, like the original jack-o'-lantern.
Oh, really?
They called it Stingy Jack.
Okay.
I thought Rory's maybe a little spooky boy.
So it's not the story of a wasp that chased him when he was a child or something. Okay.
Yeah, it's like the name of the boss in Donkey Kong Country 2, the giant bee. That's Stingy Jack.
Stingy Jack.
No, right. Anybody who's into the Halloween folklore history, you can look it up. I probably should have before this call. I don't know what the hell. Rory wrote it.
Oh, I'll have to look it up too.
The tale of Stingy Jack. Yeah, it's the first. He is the Jack in question when you talk about a jack-o'-lantern.
Oh, good to know. So I'll look that one up, and I will. I'll compensate you right now, and I'll say look up the Hodag, because that's a really cool old folktale too. Hodag.
Ooh. Okay, I'm into that.
Oh yeah, from the wilds of Wisconsin, the Hodag.
More Halloween folklore. 'Tis the season.
Yeah. By the way, Stingy Jack, really nice layering on that one. And once again, you guys are treading that line between the edgier stuff and the melodic stuff. And going between those phrasings and those sounds is pretty satisfying for myself. I really like listening to that kind of stuff.
Cool. It's definitely a bit of a reprieve from all the heavy stuff. It's more atmospheric and moody and kind of a vibe, and that's kind of us leaning into maybe more of like a Medeski Martin and Wood inspired, like spooky kind of groove. And this was one that Rory brought to the table a couple of years ago, like in fall. And he had this just cool 7 groove in it. When the song starts from the drums, it kind of leaves a lot open for the guitar and bass. And it's cool to react to something strictly rhythmically than from a riff or like a melodic idea. And yeah, I love John's guitar playing at the end, the clean guitar when we're accenting that 7/4 groove. And this was just kind of, it's the weird track. Like, I was curious how people were going to react to it, but a lot of people have shared this track. And so it's cool. So I'm glad we kind of scratched people's like weird spooky itch with this one. And, it's another one in an odd time, and it's odd. So it fits on the back half there.
Thematically relevant. And it did catch me the first listen through, and it was a highlight for me.
Cool.
Specifically those more melodic, cleaner parts. Because it is a bit of a reprieve, but it also lets you guys stretch out and just get goofy. Not goofy. We'll say spooky.
Yeah, we'll say spooky. It's weird. It's odd. Yeah. It's a song that has a lot of space. We played this when we were on tour with Mike Dillon and Brian Haas, who plays with Punkadelic. He plays keys, but he also plays left-handed, bass on the Moog. Mm-hmm. This was one that he would sit in on every night. And this was like a new song. We'd be playing the song, and he would come up there and just go crazy on my microKORG synth. Like, he would just go fucking out there.
Awesome.
And like when Haas goes out, he goes out. And I'll just share with you a quick little anecdote about the time he played with Les Claypool. That he told us is, I forget who he was, if it was Frog Brigade or who it was, and maybe he was filling in for Jeff Trementi or something like that. But he was playing with Les, and he goes like, "All right, take it out, Haas." And Haas takes it out because Haas is like a crazy jazz wizard, and he is just going off and going nuts. And then after the set, he said Les came up to it and he goes, "Haas, when I say take it out, not that out." So Haas weirded out Claypool with his playing on that, and so we let Haas just go full out when he sat in with us on this one.
Oh, yes, and he gets to go full out with Punkadelic too, and it's a delight. He's
a madman. He is on another planet.
I think it's great that he took out Les. That's very funny.
Not that out, Haas.
Not that out, buddy.
Yeah,
Hinterlands, jeez. That's cool, man. And Haas. I can imagine Haas playing on Stingy Jack. That would be pretty sweet.
And, we had talked about it, and we were going to have Haas have a feature. There's actually a Moog solo at the end of the track that's Johnny playing.
Yeah.
And, we had talked to Haas about this one. We had even talked to Mike Dillon about maybe playing some percussion on Del Mondo. Mm-hmm. And I think overall, as cool as that would have been, and as much as we love those guys, I think we kind of wanted to just keep it as a trio for this record. But whereas live, it's totally open. Like, I would love to play Del Mondo with Mike at a show, and I would love to have Haas back up for Stingy Jack.
Yeah, for sure.
And so but it just felt like there should be a synth there. It felt a little too open to not have anything on top. So this one will be, I think, fun to explore live with some different players once we get Haas going full out again, which we will.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And then we end the record with End Times. And this one book ends, get to use that word a bunch here, the record with this tripped out trip hop lungs pseudo reprise. To me, it's
accurate,
a really...
yes.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm in the right ballpark. And to me, and maybe it is to you, and you can get into this, it's a symbolic note to end on because it really hammers the message home from the first track. And as we've discussed with many of our Primus records, it makes it cyclical or circular in nature.
Yeah, exactly. And the last time Rory and I were on the podcast for the Awakening episode that we recorded with you guys on Soya earlier in the summer, I think we were talking a bit about that and how Primus ends albums with a kind of reprise like To Defy on Frizzle Fry and Los Bastardos. And that was something I always love. I love bookending albums, and I probably got that from Primus and Claypool. And a lot of my favorite records or concept albums do that. Mars Volta, Francis the Mute. I love how it ends with Cygnus. Or actually, that was the track that didn't go on the record, Francis the Mute. For any like insane hardcore Volta fans who are like gonna come at me with torches. But yeah, there's just it's something thematic and cool, and not that this record is necessarily like a concept album. I think there's a lot going, and it's up to we like people to interpret it however they will. But it came from a demo when Johnny had wrote Lungs of the Planet, he had kind of recorded it like singing this bass line and beatboxing the drums, and it's him playing bass and beatboxing the drums on it.
Nice.
And it just kind of it has just this kind of spooky, ethereal quality to it that just kind of felt like it ended it the right way. And it makes it cyclical. It's kind of cool if you listen to the album on repeat, how End Times goes into Lungs again. So it worked.
That encapsulates Odd Times. That's all 9 tracks right there. Luke, man, thanks for talking to us about Odd Times, and thank you for the insights too. That's probably going to color my listening a little bit, but in a positive way, or in a more informed way, I suppose. Like I said, I've only heard it twice so far, but it's certainly worth repeat listens to truly get to the heart of the music. And if you guys are interested, you should be interested because you heard of some awesome clips.
I love what I heard on your clips, Josh.
Oh, I only picked the best, Frankie. But there's a lot more to this record that deserves unpacking. So Lespecial.net is a great landing point. At Lespecial Music on Instagram. Luke's at Luke Bemand Bass. You can find Lespecial on Bandcamp, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, MySpace, you name it. They are there. I don't know about the MySpace. I might be making that up.
I think it's still active.
Awesome. Yes, I'm going to go there right now and see what's up on that site.
Oh, please don't.
And then you guys, to wrap it up, you guys are touring in November and December east of the Mississippi River. And you can find those dates at lespecial.net. Plans shaping up for 2024. I got to imagine you guys are going to be hitting the road hard.
Yeah. And thanks again, Josh, for having me on it and asking some thoughtful questions about it. And I'm stoked to hear anybody that listens to the podcast, what they think about it. I've been introduced to such a cool community with the Primus Tracks podcast, so I'm super eager to hear what anybody has to say. And Frankie, I'm excited to hear what you think about it. Please text me immediately.
Nice.
We've got this Odd Times tour is starting. Yeah, it takes us pretty much from October 13th to December 9th. And yeah, like you said, Josh, it's all East Coast dates. And then we'll be getting into some festivals. We've already announced a festival in Arizona, Gem and Jam in February.
Nice.
So yeah, we're going to be hitting the road pretty hard in support of this record. So check it out. And if you like it, check out the tour dates, and would love to meet y'all and see you at a show.
go out and get Odd Times. We'll put up a thread on Instagram, of course, and drop your thoughts there. Tag Luke, tag Lespecial Music.
Tag me, egg me, whatever.
Luke, thanks again, man. Odd Times, the new Lespecial record. That's a lot to get excited about. So go out, lespecial.net, at Lespecial Music. Go get it, guys. Luke, thanks again.
Thanks so much, guys.
Later days.
Thanks, Luke. Willie Mays.